Hey folks, Les here, and I want to discuss FNS joining eUnited, as FNS has been inactive, sitting on Cloud9's bench for a while now after, obviously leaving CLG and then briefly joining Complexity before getting picked up by Cloud9 and only being able to play a couple of events. And, that whole snafu that happened there, I actually did a whole video about this. I thought he was not really given a fair shot over at Cloud9. I think that was a really missing out situation, but now he does find himself a new opportunity over here at eUnited. A team that's been kind of sitting in the middle of the pack of the North American scene for a little while now, and it's at times shown a little bit of potential, and he looks to add some more veteran experience and a true in-game leader to the team, as Relyks have been in-game leading the team all year long, though he was never really a traditional in-game leader. It's just like his really first foray into doing it on a regular basis, and I actually thought it was going pretty well, all things considered, considering that he hadn't really done it too much, but apparently it's not something he wanted to continue to do long term. They saw an opportunity to bring in a more experienced in-game leader to the team, and they have now put Relyks to a primary AWP position because Ace is the one that's being benched to bring FNS in. And so I just want to talk to this move a little bit and give you kind of my take on it. So let's talk about eUnited a little bit first from this year prior to FNS's arrival to the team. Essentially, they started out the year a little bit rough. I mean, they weren't able to qualify for any of the DreamHack Open events they attempted to qualify for, like Tour, Summer, and Valencia. Missed out on qualifying for Starlighter Season 5. Originally didn't even qualify for DreamHack Austin either. And these are, after losing to sometimes weaker teams. They lost to some mixed team called the Pioneers in the DreamHack Austin qualifier after beating Team 1. Lost to Swole Patrol in the Tours qualifiers. Took losses to Team 1 and Renegades in the Starlighter Season 5 qualifiers, lost out to Complexity and DreamHack Summer qualifiers after beating Swole Patrol, and then lost out to Luminosity, who went on to Valencia after having went over Complexity and Swole Patrol. So they were at times, beating Complexity and Swole Patrol, but still not ever making it to these offline events. But they did do pretty well in ECS Season 5. They were 6th place, so middle of the pack, just a couple of spots away from making it to the playoffs. They actually had some wins over Optic Gaming and Team Liquid. They took some mats off of Cloud9, Luminosity, and SK, and they had straight-up losses to Energy, Renegades, and Rogue, though, Energy was beating the shit out of everyone in that league, so fair enough. They also wound up winning Mountain Dew League early in the year over Swole Patrol to get a spot into EPL, which they're in right now this season. And they wound up falling a little bit short in the Global Challenge at VSCA, losing the Spirit in the best of 3, and I think it was semifinals. And they also ultimately lost out on qualifying for ESL1 Cologne after getting eliminated by Optic. Now, they did wind up actually going to DreamHack Austin. I can't remember exactly how this came about. Someone had to pull out or something like that. And so they actually did wind up going to DreamHack Austin earlier this year, and I actually was at this event as a commentator, and they actually, from an eye test, did look pretty impressive here. They beat Fraxers in a best of 1 to open the tournament, then they lost to Heroic, and then they wound up playing a really tight best of 3 against Fraxers in the decider best of 3. And while they did have a group stage exit here at DreamHack Austin, again, from an eye test, they actually looked pretty good, like boosting to be like a pretty stable peripheral player. They seem to be actually playing a pretty disciplined, nice default style of Counter-Strike. They seem to have some decently established roles with like default mid-control styles of play, being able to vary up timings as well, throw in some set pieces. Definitely seem to be a pretty decently diverse team, given Relyks' lack of experience as an in-game leader. There was a little bit of like kind of role flexibility, particularly on Cash, where it didn't seem like they really had quite solidified spots. And again, maybe they weren't as deep tactically. And in some maps like Mirage, for instance, they could throw in a lot of just like 1-4 aggressive type stuff and keep it a little bit looser. But all in all, again, for the type of team that they were, I actually thought they were pretty impressive tactically on how well balanced their playbook was for a team that was a lot of younger, inexperienced players, particularly Relyks in the in-game leader department. Now, one of the big things they did struggle with, though, through all this, was the fact that they still did just seem to lack the ability to have those consistent performances from their players. Outside of Moose and maybe to a degree Dapper, a lot of these guys were really struggling to frag on a consistent basis. Dazzle will pop off at times, but struggle on others. Same with Ace. Relyks, obviously, as an in-game leader, at times wasn't always able to frag really heavy. And, they were, again, struggling all these qualifiers. Like, they didn't qualify for Stockholm, losing to Ghost and Rogue. They lost out really early in the New York qualifiers to Bravado. They weren't able to make it to Zotac Masters, having a really embarrassing best of 3 loss to Furia in the opening best of 3 for that tournament, and ultimately also weren't able to make it to the major, losing out in the minor to Complexity and Rogue, and again not qualifying for Starlighter Season 6, losing to Team 1. Really, the only success they typically have really had was qualifying for IM Chicago over Cloud9 and Swole Patrol, and being able to qualify for DreamHack Atlanta, which happened very recently, actually, when they were able to beat Space Station and Furia. Now, they had done pretty decent in some of the pro leagues. I think in ECS, though, they're still going to miss out on playoffs. They're kind of, again, sitting in the middle pack, almost similar to last season. But in EPL, they have a real shot at coming in number 6 for the league, which would indeed put them into the playoffs. They're kind of fighting with Cloud9 right now as far as who will solidify that 6th seed, maybe a couple other teams in the race too. But there's definitely a chance to make the EPL finals this time around. And they will definitely be going to DreamHack Atlanta, but they did miss out on DreamHack Winter. And again, they also are going to IM Chicago. So IM Chicago and Atlanta are 2 LAN events they'll have a chance to do some stuff at. And, a lot of other events that they missed out on. And again, weren't able to do really what they needed to in ECS. So as far as whether or not they needed to make a move, yeah, it did seem like they kind of hit a little bit of a ceiling, but I don't know if in-game leadership is actually going to fix that. Again, I feel like they actually had a pretty decent playbook and actually played a pretty decent system of Counter-Strike. I just feel like a lot of their players weren't performing consistently. Now, can an in-game leader who changes up the style of play or finds a better way to use people, can they maybe get better performances out of the players? Will they just get better and more consistent just from more reps in an offline environment and getting used to playing at that level, get used to playing on stage, all these different things just from gaining experience as a player? It's hard to know, exactly how that will work out in the end, but certainly you could see that they were falling a little bit short, missing out on a lot of different events by falling in qualifiers, not, again, getting those consistent performances. And even if they did look impressive from an eye test, it still just wasn't adding up. It seemed like some teams had kind of started to surpass them. It seemed like, teams, I don't know, they would just kind of trade series with teams. Like sometimes Soul Patrol is like the biggest example, where sometimes they'll lose this team, other times they'll be able to beat them to get to where they need to be. They might pull off what was maybe considered an upset against Cloud9 for the IM Chicago qualifiers, though nowadays with Cloud9, I'm not really sure that's the case, but then they'd lose weirdly to Bravado in an ESO1 New York qualifier. So you could just kind of see the inconsistencies in performance there. And maybe FNS can bring a little bit of flair to the team, because when FNS was in-game leading for CLG, because I won't really be able to speak to Cloud9 because I don't think he was there long enough to really know what he's going to be able to do, but he was a guy that was also able to throw together some really cool stuff. I feel like he was able to bring a good balance of fast-paced executes and map control type styles of play. He also seemed to have the tendency to not just play traditional default the majority of the time. He would always kind of lean towards one side, usually put some well-coordinated attacks together. Like some of the maps that eUnited like to play a lot coming into this move are maps like Cache, Inferno, Mirage, and Overpass, and a little bit of Train. And so when you think about some of these maps that FNS called for CLG on Cache, he was really able to bring in some really nice heavy utility executes for each bomb site, including at times some more rare and unique locations for smokes and stuff like that, and good molly coverage to make sure that everything was taken care of and really opening things up. So that's just kind of Cache, for example, but he could still play defaults. He could still do the basic, have that foundation. You look at some of these other maps where he's able, like Inferno, for example, to make sure you can play the standard map control style of play and drill in those basics, but have a lot of different smoke setups from mid to attack the A bomb site, including smoke walls on the pit, and being able to do these different apartment explodes executions or throwing in fakes. Mirage, a guy that typically would, towards the end of his time at CLG, really like to throw in those faster paced mid-B splits, or, really do these 1-4, 2-3 type attacks and really use lots of speed, but also add some good utility and make sure that the attacks were coordinated and make sure that, he was setting up his star players to shine. And even at times would throw some really cool fakes in. I would say that FNS drifted a little bit more away from just disciplined defaults and more towards gimmicky stuff, or more elaborate executes and more aggressive plays. And so I feel like he's definitely good enough to teach the basics and teach the foundation of a default, but I feel like he can just add a little bit more to the playbook. I think that they're going to have more tactics that can be called, and perhaps maybe FNS can just kind of help bring some experience to some of these players, help maybe learn how to use some of them better even. I feel like he will also be really motivated to do with this team. I think he knows that eUnited's in a position where, with a little bit more, they could truly be, a playoff contender on a regular basis in the North American Pro Leagues, and be a team that can regularly qualify for DreamHack Open events and perhaps sneak their way into Tier 1 events if they just improve their level just the slightest bit to come out of that really scrappy middle of the pack situation we have in NA right now between teams like eUnited, Complexity, Rogue, Renegades, Ghost, yes, all these different teams that are kind of in the middle of the pack. I feel like he can just bring this team up just a little bit. Maybe they'll be able to come out from all of that and be one of those teams that you regularly see attending events. And so I think that is the ambition. Now, the one thing you have to think about is like, are they ever going to get more consistent performances out of their players offline? It's not like FNS could just solve that magically by himself. So I think that's one thing you have to think about. Will they adjust well to FNS's style of calling? That's always going to be a growing pain period as you have to, practice to kind of get used to his calling or get used to the new executes you want to bring to the table. You have a busy schedule right now with official matches online for ECS and EPL and different qualifiers. So how much time do you actually have to practice? So that's going to probably make it take even longer to make that transition and get to where they need to be. And the other big thing that we have to talk about is how is Relyks going to be as a primary AWP? I don't think he's ever really served this role on a long-term basis. I mean, I'm sure he's dabbled in it and done secondary opping, but he's never been the guy, the primary AWP for the team. And I'm not sure if this is maybe just like kind of short-term thing, if maybe they'll look to bring in a primary op again at some point in the future, or if Relyks really can embrace this role and do something with it. Very rarely do you see a guy just transition into being a primary opper and become really good at it overnight and just be, kind of knock your socks off with it. Not saying it can't happen, but I think that's like another big question mark is how will Relyks respond to the primary opping role? Will he be able to deliver in this role? Now that he's not in-game leading anymore, will that in itself just bring up his individual performance and get him to be a more consistent player? These are, certainly a lot of questions out there. And I think that because there are so many questions, it's really hard to gauge how well this team really is going to be able to perform with this move. But again, I think they were already a pretty decent middle of the pack North American team. I thought they were right there in the mix with some of the other teams I named earlier. I think they definitely could improve a little bit with FNS's leadership. I think FNS, this is a great opportunity for him to still prove his value as an in-game leader after the whole Cloud9 debacle and only having been able to serve a short time with Complexity. This can be a chance for him to really kind of strut his stuff and show what he's got. And I think this is there is enough talent on this team to where he could do a little bit of something, right? Like, these guys have shown flashes of brilliance, particularly Moose, very consistent guy. He's the one consistent piece on this team, I feel like, and certainly their top player on a regular basis. So that already gives him one stable piece. And if he can, work with some of these other guys and get them to a better level, then I think that, again, this team could certainly maybe take, one step up and at least attend playoffs for pro leagues a little bit more regularly, maybe get to a few more LAN events. But once they get to those LAN events, it's about, can you actually finally start getting out of group stages, maybe start trying to make some deeper runs at some DreamHack Open type events, at least get to some semifinals, and that's where we really get to see. Unfortunately, they haven't played any official match with their full five yet, because I think when FNS first came in, he was actually filling in for Moose, and then recently they had Mitch filling in for Moose because Moose was playing at WSG qualifiers as I'm recording this video, so I haven't even got to see their full five play at all yet. So I think we'll eventually start seeing them play some online matches for pro leagues, and I know they have DreamHack Atlanta coming up and IM Chicago coming up, so a couple of LAN events coming up in November where we'll get a better look at them. But this is kind of my initial reaction of what eUnited's been up to this year, what FNS might be able to bring to the table, what they need to be looking at doing to be able to kind of take that next step up the ladder. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe for more content. Thanks so much.